G'day, I'm Pete, the Aussie Bush Cop. In 2012 I retired from the New South Wales Police and made the radical decision to move to King Island and become a homesteader. And I'd like to share some of my police stories with you. G'day everybody, thanks so much for joining me. Well, we've done a few stories with my old Holden in the background, but today we've gone a bit upmarket and I'm sitting in the King Island radio and television van that Wade gets around in and does his outside broadcasts and whatnot in. So it's a bit of a different background for us. And the stories that I have for you today are quite eclectic. You've heard, I guess police corruption is a pretty big subject, and so it should be. But the story I have for you today is about police corruption, but not how you think it's going to be. I think words are really important and powerful, and the word corrupt means something that's just not right, and there's something that's in it that shouldn't be there, or something that should be in it and is not. Sounds a bit cryptic, but I'll explain. This story happened probably over a couple of events, a couple of occasions where I became aware that this policeman, that there was something wrong, and but not morally wrong. I guess that's correct. Not morally wrong, not legally wrong, but it turned out this person just didn't have what it took to be a police officer, or didn't have it anymore. And how I became aware of it was that one time we had we were chasing a vehicle, and we finally got the vehicle to pull over, and I was the driver of the car, of the police truck. And when I and the vehicle that came to a stop was on the left-hand side, so I had to get out of the driver's door, walk around the front of the vehicle, and the offender was still in his vehicle. So then I moved pretty quickly, I suppose, but my partner, who was in the front passenger seat, was more or less adjacent to the offender and the offender's vehicle. And he was noticeably slow in getting out and doing what he should have done. And that bothered me. It bothered me for a number of reasons. One is that I need to be able to rely upon my partner for the shift to back me up, to be there when the proverbial hits the fan. And if you can't do that, then you just don't deserve to be wearing the uniform and carrying the badge. And but that's not an isolated incident. There was another time prior to that, maybe weeks or maybe at the most a month or so before that, where I noted similar issues with the same person. And maybe at that time it was a lesser thing, but I looked past it, but I certainly kept it in my mind. Then when the second incident happened, well, I then was beholden on me to do something about it. And that's not easy, but at the same time, it's relatively easy. You have to do the things that need to be done, have to be done. And so my role there was I was a senior constable. The person involved was of a lesser rank than me. And so I had to report that to the next senior officer at that command where I worked, and that was a sergeant. And so I reported that matter to the sergeant and outlined my concerns about the two instances that I saw, and that was the right way to go about it. There's no joy in doing that, because people that become police officers do it because they have a passion to help people and to put matters before a court. There's no joy in highlighting someone's deficiencies. I'd say those deficiencies weren't there in the beginning, but cowardice is something that cannot be tolerated in the police. I don't care how scared you are. I can tell you freely, there have been many times when I've been poop scared, but you do it anyway. You've got to. And if you can't do that, then you need to have the internal gumption to say, I can't do this anymore, and bow out. So what happened, the result of what I'm sharing with you now, I don't really know. It's not part of something that I'll be privy to, but I do know that not long after that, that officer resigned. And that's probably a good thing. Well, not probably, it was a good thing. So you have to be on the lookout for all these kinds of things. And another time that I can remember something similar, that was when we went to the scene of a brawl. And yeah, there was just it was more, I think it might have been a neighbourhood dispute. And there was people fighting in the street, you know, just brawling with each other. And my partner and I got there, and we were both fairly senior constables. And we quickly got our offender quickly on the ground and handcuffed and ready to be put into the truck. But the other attending truck, which had two police officers in it, two senior police officers in it, there was one person there that was a probationary constable, and a fairly new probationary constable. I remember looking up and seeing the look on this person's face, this probationary constable's face, and it was one of absolute alarm. The mouth was open, the eyes were wide, and I would say pretty much frozen with fear. Now, that was something that we all go through, but that person went on to be certainly a great officer. But it was one of the things that I remember thinking, well, that's what happens. Most people go through maybe their entire lives without ever getting into a fight with anyone. Well, if you want to change that, join the coppers, because you'll get into a fight, a physical fight, with someone pretty quick, and you've got to be able to deal with it. The next, well, maybe make it a bit the mood a bit lighter, is that one time I was at the police station, and of course any decent sized station, maybe even small ones, have their regular flyers, their regular clientele, and that's true of all over the world. I know when I've been discussing police stories with my friend Mike, the Texan, retired Texan policeman, we've joked about the same thing. Anyway, this particular story was there was this fellow who was, I think, developmentally delayed is the expression, the right way to describe someone like him, and he was a pretty innocent sort of a fellow, and he used to get around on a push bike, and he was the constant target of thugs who just wanted to harass him and annoy him as he rode around on his push bike. And because of his mental state, it was impossible to take any meaningful evidence from him. I mean, evidence that you could put before a court. So, you might say in a fatherly sort of a way, I said to him, listen, mate, you are not allowed out on Friday night and Saturday night after 6 o'clock in the evening. I don't want to see you out riding around on your bike. Someone needed to really care for him. This bloke actually had parents, and I went to his home once to visit this man, and his parents were just lovely people, but very elderly. I would say, in their 80s. And, and with their permission, I did some of these things and said to him, mate, you're just not allowed out. You had to think for him. And that was really effective, because I remember running into him, might have been more than a year later. I know I transferred from that station to another station, and I saw him riding his push bike, and I was just in my private car, and I actually spoke to him and asked him about about my suggestion that he doesn't go out Friday and Saturday nights anymore after dark, and he was still complying with it. And in a similar vein, another man came into the police station. This is a pretty big station where I was working. He came into the station with a genuine, heartfelt concern about the welfare of his son. The son was about 14 years old, about the age where you start to test the boundaries of what you can get away with. Now, the father was not someone who was fully able to contain his son's rambunctious behaviour, and he needed some assistance. And the father actually said to me, they always call you Sarge, even though I wasn't a sergeant. It was a term of endearment, really. He came into the station, and I knew this man reasonably well. And he said to me, Sarge, can you just put him on bail? And I, explained that I just can't put him on bail. He hasn't committed an offence. But what we did was we took him into a side room, a private office, and I told this young man that he wasn't, the offences or the trouble he was getting into was down the main street, during the day. I can't even remember what it was now. Might have been shoplifting offences, I really can't remember. But so I said with the okay of his father, said to this young man, okay, you are no longer allowed down the main street unless you are in the immediate presence of your mother or your father. And he sort of nodded, and agreed with that. And again, that worked. I remember doing a patrol of the main street of this particular town and seeing the father and the son walking along together, and I think the mother might have been there too. And the father looked at me, looked at the son, as if to say, "We're doing what you said, Sarge." And as far as I can remember, that man didn't come under any more police notice. I don't like. I'm not his father, and it's a shame that someone else has to step in and be a fatherly figure. But if that's what it takes, then that's probably a good thing. And some of the things that we dealt with in the police was just dealing with people. I don't want to say that they're anything about their intelligence, but their understanding of the world is fairly rigid, and they look for rigid remedies for their problems. And I'm a little bit more in my thinking. I've always been a little bit more abstract in my thinking, and but I was able to adopt my thinking to apply some of these more rigid solutions to their problems. But here's another one where I was at my one of my one-man stations, and I was getting ready to mow my lawn, the back lawn. And I had one of those mowers, just a push mower, and I was attempting to start it by pulling the cord, and it just wouldn't start. Now, my mechanical abilities are reasonably limited. And before I knew it, my neighbour was who had certainly had a different way of seeing the world, if you can read between the lines. He was the doyen of small engines. He could fix a small engine. He found this out later. But as I'm trying to start my mower, and it was a 4-stroke mower for users that are mechanically interested, and he said, Pete, the valves need grinding. And I'm thinking, what? And he more or less took the mower out of my hands and started pushing it towards his place. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to pull my mower apart. I could see it in my mind's eye, it's going to be in 50 different pieces on his workshop bench or floor. And I'm thinking, how am I going to afford to buy a brand new mower? That was my immediate thought. Anyway, about very soon after, maybe 1 hour, he brought it back, and he started it, and it worked perfectly. He pulled the head off it. He got to the valves. He ground the valves, and it worked perfectly. It was then that I realised that that there are people in the world who have an absolute genius for doing a particular thing. I call it the word would be a savant, and this man was a savant on small engines. And as I become to get to know him better after that, I learned things about him that just confirmed that view. And so one of the issues with being in the coppers, and it's a big and it's a possible big curse is that you start to think you know everything. You start to think you're more important or more powerful than everybody else, and you just aren't. And that was a thing that brought it home to me, is that there are people that know things that I got almost zero idea about, and that's their area of speciality. And it's great to value them, and that's one day where that happened. The last couple of stories for you is to do with kangaroos. Now, of course, most of the people that watch these podcasts are from Australia. And where I was stationed, there was kangaroos in the wild. We didn't see them in petting zoos and other places like that. And one particular day, someone had hit a kangaroo with their car, and the kangaroo was severely injured. And so they called us, and so we attended, we and my partner. And here was this critically injured kangaroo on the side of the road. Now, the protocol is to put the muzzle of the pistol, it's a 40 calibre pistol, to the head of the animal and pull the trigger and dispatch it quickly. Well, this kangaroo was still standing up, and there was no way in the world I was going to get close enough to put my muzzle of the pistol to its head and pull the trigger. I quite possibly could have got quite badly scratched or injured. And what I really wanted to do, and as you probably know, pistols aren't greatly accurate. What I really wanted to do was just shoot it in the chest, which would have put it on the ground pretty quickly, and then dispatch it with a muzzle, with a shot to the head. But these people kept on hanging around, and I didn't know why. And these members of the public just kept on hanging around. They were only tourists too. They were only travelling through this particular area. And so I don't know what sort of came over me, but I took out the pistol, and normally the stance for using the pistol is like that, you know, two-handed. I don't know why, but for whatever reason I just went one hand and aiming at the kangaroo's head and discharged a shot. And I got it right in the head, and it died instantly. I seriously felt like you know, and reholstering. But anyway, it was worked out really, really well. The last story for you about a kangaroo happened at a site where men were repairing the road. And it was a long way from where I was. It took me, I think, at least an hour to get there. And it was a really hot day. And if you've lived in the central west of New South Wales, you know how hot it can get. You're up around the 40 degree mark, or in the old language around the 100 or so plus degrees. Anyway, I finally got there, and there was this poor kangaroo that had been hit by a motor vehicle and was laying on the side of the road. And it still makes me angry even now when I talk about it. This poor kangaroo was laying there on the ground, just barely breathing. And these men hadn't even the sense to move it into the shade. And they had equipment there that they could have easily used to dispatch the poor animal, like just knocking it over the head with a length of steel. Like in my car now, I carry, because I live on an island where there's 250,000 wallabies. We don't have any kangaroos. And if I see a kangaroo on the side of the road, or indeed I hit one myself, as has happened a couple of times, I carry a length of steel in the back of my car, and if need be, I just put it down quickly. These men didn't have the idea to do that, and people get so caught up in protocols. We've got to call the police. For goodness sake, people, think for yourself. Put the thing down. And I was so angry that I gave very serious consideration to charging the man that was in charge of that group of men with a cruelty offence against animals. In the end, I decided not to do that. But man, I was cranky about it. The poor kangaroo, you know, all it needed was someone with a few brains. Few people were prepared to think outside of the square and just put the poor thing down. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you again.